Assalamu alaikum, welcome in debate. I have your host Tariq Khan. Pakistan had been fighting global war on terror since 9/11 and has spoiled soft image over the globe. Where do the Pakistan stand in international community, and what is the role, position and image at the global level? We will explore and analyze the Pakistan's role in regional strategic stability. Let me introduce our guest in program, Professor Dr. Huma Bakai. You are experts on international relations, Associate Dean at IBA Karachi. You are also the Government Advisory Council member on Foreign Affairs. Ma'am, thank you so much for joining us and you are welcome. Ma'am, how do you foresee the enmity of two nuclear powers, India and Pakistan, in South Asia, and how do they challenge the strategic stability in South Asia from domestic, regional, and global perspectives?
The rising rivalry, or the way it is being played out between India and Pakistan, largely because of Indian behavior, it is extremely dangerous. Mr. Noam Chomsky, yesterday in his lecture in Habib University, identified the nuclear threat as the topmost threat facing the world. And he categorically said that a war between India and Pakistan will be terminal. So if that is, and the border between India and Pakistan is also called the second most dangerous border in the world. We've been in a state of a mini war with India since perhaps 2017. That is something that is said by an Indian general himself. The peace of South Asia, acquisition of peace in Afghanistan, the progress and growth of South Asia, the fate of people who live below poverty line in South Asia are all hostage to the confrontation between India and Pakistan. Modi's government in India and Trump's government in the United States has not helped the situation, because we know that Trump has dismantled all arrangements of restraint on nuclear weapons. And in the case of Pakistan also, there is a breakdown of talks. The Kashmir issue has spiraled. In fact, South Asia, this particular region, has become a central point of three nuclear powers. It's not just two. It's not just Pakistan and India. It is Pakistan, India and China. Because now India is also in a very active, unpalatable confrontation with China on the Ladakh border. And I think that is a dangerous situation. Right now, China's thrust is to send a message and draw a red line. But this can result in India reacting or taking out its frustration at Pakistan, which can at any time lead to a situation which will, what commentators say, a terminal war. People like Chomsky.
Pakistan has played a significant role in bringing Taliban to table talks. Now Islamabad has pledged to facilitate intra-Afghan dialogue as well, wherever feasible. How would you differentiate the US as well as Afghanistan's recent state behavior towards Pakistan?
You see, Pakistan has always been saying that there has to be a political solution to the situation in Afghanistan. It is when the peripheral powers, which included China, which included Russia, that sort of put forward their support also behind a political solution by cultivating and inviting the Taliban for talks, resulted in United States and the Taliban both sort of backing from their stated hardened positions and agreeing to talk in Doha. And post-Doha talks also, we have seen that there was resistance by the Afghan government. Later on, United States had to do some very stringent arm twisting, which continues today, where it has categorically told the Afghan government, and it has also told the Taliban that the funding will stop unless the peace process makes progress. That is the kind of arm twisting United States has had to do to bring an intra-Afghan peace dialogue to happen. What is Pakistan's role? Pakistan has made a major paradigm shift in its policy. The first is that Pakistan has completely abandoned the concept of strategic depth. In fact, the term Afghanistan-owned, Afghanistan-led peace process was coined by Pakistan, and Pakistan stands committed to it. Number two, Pakistan has done everything to facilitate the Taliban coming to the negotiating table and supporting a dialogue, a consensus, and showing a commitment to talk to anybody who comes to power in Afghanistan. And thirdly, and more importantly, Pakistan has fenced the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. And this is a very, if those who are familiar with the terrain will know that this is a very difficult border to fence. And General Bajwa, in a recent interaction with the press, called it the fence of peace. And I think these are important steps. We've also gone into collaboration with border management with Iran. So Pakistan is committed to peace in Afghanistan. Pakistan is committed to the fact that if there is peace in Afghanistan, it will have positive repercussions for Pakistan. And if there is instability and chaos in Afghanistan, that will also negatively impact Pakistan. Having said that, Pakistan is also very sensitive to the Afghan ground being used against Pakistan by India through Afghanistan. And now we have presented unrefutable evidence of the same to the international community and the United Nations. And we have also perhaps requested the Afghan government to do what it can about it, but have not held Afghan government responsible for it. Because we understand that there is a limitation of capacity and capability of the Afghan government. That is why what India does from Afghanistan into Pakistan, we do not hold the Afghan government responsible for it, but we would want Afghan government to take cognizance of it, do what it can about it. And it wants the international community to intervene and stop the spoilers from sabotaging this very important initiative. You know, Abdullah was in Pakistan, and one of the most important things that he said was that we must seize the moment. There is a change of heart in the Afghan government. The more consensus building should happen, this peace process should move forward, and the change of government in the United States should not impact the peace process negatively. However, the role of India from impeding peace in Afghanistan or in South Asia should be taken into consideration by the international community.
India is playing diplomatically in Afghanistan against Pakistan as well as CPAC. Do you think Afghanistan has still more tendency and preference towards India?
I have visited Afghanistan several times in the last few years, and the support for India is palpable. India has made a lot of inroads in terms of soft power. The Afghan media is really very, very pro-India. I was also told that Afghan parliamentarians, if they make a speech against Pakistan in the Afghan parliament, they then directly go to the Indian embassies and they're given a cash reward for that. So building an anti-Pakistan sentiment in Afghanistan is a part of the Indian strategy. They have also done some very important soft power investments in India, in Afghanistan, whether it is building dams or building roads or it is their electricity system. All of that has been funded and supported by India. But at the same time, another very quiet power playing a very important role in Afghanistan is China. China has emerged as the largest donor of financial assistance to Afghanistan in the history of Afghanistan. And I think that is going to change the reality on the ground. And most importantly, I think it is the Afghan people who have to make this conscious decision of allowing their land to be used by powers for their own vested interest or to align with powers that will help Afghanistan get out of this 40-year-old conflict and emerge as an independent, sovereign state. And I think this is what Abdullah was referring to when he said seize the moment. it is important that peace process has been initiated. It is important that the Afghan government and the Taliban are talking to each other. And I think we should not let this go. We should not let the spoilers take this away from the real stakeholders of peace in Afghanistan.
How do you perceive India-US strategic cooperation and relations under the Biden administration, and what will be the prospects for the South Asian region?
I don't think that there is going to be a major paradigm shift in the relationship between New Delhi and Washington. Trump was very obviously pro-Modi to the point that he ignored the atrocities in Kashmir, he ignored the human rights violations, he ignored the complete destruction of constitutionalism and secular democracy in India under Modi regime, and went on for a very strategic convergence. We all know about the pact that he signed just before he was going into elections for intelligence sharing with India against Pakistan and China. I think Biden is a more experienced diplomat and a politician. So he may be a little subtle about how he supports India, but the convergence will remain intact, because the convergence is related to the larger security matrix in South Asia, the confrontational politics that is going on in South Asia. Trump, of course, was head-on about it, and I'm talking about China here. So perhaps if Biden turns this confrontation with China into competition with China, the situation may improve a certain notch. But the convergence between New Delhi and Washington is real in terms of the fact that India is a market that is very attractive to the United States. It's one of the largest buyers of weapons. And the whole thrust of India of an extended neighborhood in the West, in West Asia, which includes India cultivating Saudi Arabia and UAE, also falls into the larger matrix of how the United States sees the security construct of the world to emerge. So to encapsulate it, I personally think that this convergence will strengthen, and the situation, if I put it in a binary way, in a more black and white fashion, in the coming years, you will see US and India converging, and perhaps Pakistan and China converging. That is going to be the scheme of things, and I see this getting played out in South Asia.
How would you describe the Pakistan's relations with China and United States of America in terms of regional strategic stability?
Essentially, Pakistan has been a Western ally. Pakistan became a US ally right after 1947, and the compulsion led it to remain a partner of the United States. Its rising dependence on international donor agencies and defense infrastructure on the United States further strengthened this dependence. United States also cultivated Pakistan when it needed Pakistan. So Pakistan, if you look at Pakistan-US relations, it's a relationship where it follows a swing model. So we have been most allied ally of the United States, and at the same time, we've also been the most sanctioned ally of the United States. On the other hand, if you see our relationship with China, you see an element of continuity and an element of tolerance on China's part of Pakistan's compulsions to cultivate Western powers. China has shown its displeasure, but it has always shown its displeasure in private if it has had problems with Pakistan. On the other hand, if you see United States behavior with Pakistan, it has used public humiliation as a tool of foreign policy against Pakistan. And this has turned Pakistan into a very anti-American state, and America also turns out to be a very anti-Pakistan state. This recent convergence with China on the economic front has given Pakistan what I see as some options and choices in its foreign policy. Otherwise, our foreign policy was what I used to call a story of constraints and compulsions largely. However, I also want to re-emphasize the fact that international relations and interstate relations are not zero-sum games. So if we are in convergence with China, and now we openly say that we are in a strategic convergence with China on the economic front, on the strategic front, on diplomatic fronts, and on several other fronts, it does not mean that we need to distance ourselves from Washington. Our relationship with Washington is also extremely important. However, our relationship with China is growing, and it is giving Pakistan what I call a lot of options and choices in terms of its foreign policy. And the fact that China has come out and supported Pakistan on some very contentious issues, which include Kashmir, which include Pakistan's civil nuclear program, which includes Pakistan's fight on terrorism, which includes Pakistan's role in Afghanistan. So some very important strategic convergence has taken place, and the trust elements between the two governments has only grown over years. And today Pakistan very openly sees China as a strategic ally and US as an important ally.
How would you explain Pakistan's position and image at global level, and how would you articulate Pakistan's role in South Asian regional strategic stability?
I think terrorism is a whip that has been used against Pakistan time and again. And India especially has used all international forums and its very, very efficient propaganda machinery against Pakistan to blow up this image of Pakistan as a terror sponsoring state. And because there were some elements in Pakistan that it highlighted and our narrative on the issue was missing, India was very successful in painting Pakistan as that kind of a state. Pakistan is gradually now trying to change the story. Pakistan's narrative is factoring in. Two important developments took place. I think there was this interview that happened with an Indian journalist by the security advisor of Pakistan, Dr. Moeed Yusuf, where he actually gave India a taste of its own medicine and gave forward tangible evidence of India's role in sponsoring terrorism via Afghanistan into Pakistan, of how they have allocated money for sabotaging China-Pakistan economic corridor, how they have actually, they are funding Tehreek-e-Taliban-e-Pakistan, how they are funding an organization to create IS Pakistan. And now we have a dossier, irrefutable evidence that we have put forward in front of the international community and United Nations, but still it's a long way to go. Pakistan for the first time has come on what I call the diplomatic offensive on the floor about terrorism, and I think it's going to take a long time, but I think the story is changing. Pakistan's narrative is factoring in largely for three reasons. Pakistan has actually taken some very concrete, real steps on the ground in Pakistan to showcase its commitment to the end of terror, which means ending of the no-go areas, which means actually banning terror organizations, putting people in jail, doing things to get that would get us out of the FATF grey list and eventually into the white list. Then fencing the borders. And Pakistan is fencing the borders. I mean, the Indian border is also fenced and the Afghanistan border is also fenced. Showcasing whatever that is happening in Pakistan. You know, when Pakistan has been in a country which has worked under international searchlights, and we have learned to showcase that. We've learned to put forward our point of view, whether it is the dossier, whether it is interviews given by our diplomats and people like Moeed Yusuf, or whether it is our direct interaction with Indian counterparts. And I think gradually and slowly Pakistan's narrative is building. Our story is getting factored in, but at the same time, we also have to do a lot of work on the ground, plus carry on with this diplomatic offensive to counter the Indian narrative, and also what India is really doing. Under Modi, India is actually become a state that is a troublemonger, that supports terrorism within India and outside India. And it is not just Pakistan that is talking about it. It is all independent observers of what India is like that are talking about it. So I think it is important for Pakistan to continue to showcase this and do homework on ground so that our point of view gets factored in and our story is accepted by the international community.
Well, ma'am, how would you compare the
Pakistan has a very last thing that I want to add here is Pakistan has also changed its perception of the kind of state Pakistan was going to be. Because Pakistan used to be a frontline state in conflicts, whether it was the Afghan jihad or whether it was the post 9/11 situation. That is something Pakistan has backed off from. Pakistan and Prime Minister Imran Khan was categorical about it. He stated it in the most articulate fashion. He said Pakistan is a state that is going to be a bridge state. So we can become a bridge state between Saudi Arabia and Iran. But we will not be a state that allows its land to be used against any other state. So we are a bridge state. We are a state to build cooperation, to initiate negotiations. We will never become a state now which is a part of a conflict. So with China, we are a frontline state in an economic initiative. That is the new face of Pakistan, a paradigm major shift from a geopolitical state to a geo-economic.
How do you compare the Pakistan's foreign policy by Prime Minister Imran Khan and previous administrations?
Well, I do not want to actually get into a political discussion, but I would definitely want to say that Prime Minister Imran Khan, because of his personality, because of the fact that he's a known entity to the international community, has more acceptance. So his speeches in the United Nations are very well received. The initiatives that he has taken in the region are also very well received, but at the same time, Imran Khan's foreign policy has had its share of problems. For example, our relationship with Saudi Arabia is in a bit of a problem. The initiative that Imran Khan took about with Malaysia and Turkey was not very well received in South Asia, in Saudi Arabia. We continue to struggle on that front, although we are on the diplomatic offensive and we highlight everything that India is doing. There is very little that the international community is ready to do about it. So yes, there are problems in the foreign policy that Pakistan is pursuing, but I still think that Pakistan at this moment in time is on the right side of history. We are trying to cultivate regional states. We are trying to improve relations with Bangladesh. We have this peace initiative going on with Afghanistan. Despite this very problematic, contentious relationship with India under Modi, we keep the option of dialogue on the table. Our convergence with China has only grown. And we have also told perhaps Saudi Arabia or given this message to them that we will not cultivate one state at the expense of the other. So we want to improve relations both with Tehran and Saudi Arabia. So I think we are on the right side of history. But of course there are impediments and there are problems. Pakistan is a poor country. Its dependence on donor agencies and international financial institutions is high, and sometimes that dependence is used to exploit a country and make it act in a certain fashion. So that kind of financial dependence continues to haunt Pakistan's foreign policy. But given the constraints, I think Pakistan is doing reasonably well.
Well, thank you so much for your valuable
analysis
on the topic. Thank you so much.